Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind. Well, if leftoids weren't panicking before, trust me when I tell you they're panicking now. You know, anecdotal evidence sucks, obviously. If you're trying to make an argument, anecdotal evidence, not exactly your first go-to. But anecdotal evidence, or anecdotal examples, on top of a clearly documented trend, that's just a cherry on top, that's just extra. And boy, oh boy, are the anecdotes flowing in, as more and more people continue to jump the failing, sinking Democrat ship. That seems to be what's happening here. If it's not Cenk Uygur, if it's not Ana Kasparian, if it's not your average moderate liberal, when it's not Michael Rappaport of all people, well, apparently it's lifelong Democrat Chris Cuomo. You know, Chris Cuomo, whose entire political family legacy is deeply entrenched with the Democrat Party in New York. Yeah, that Chris Cuomo. You know, the same Chris Cuomo whose brother was the Democrat mayor of New York City. Yeah, that Chris Cuomo. Well, he just came out publicly on the Valuetainment podcast with Patrick Bet-David, essentially telling the public that he is open and willing to vote for Donald Trump ahead of 2020. And the most important element here is his reasoning is basically right in line with the point that we've been making. It's right in line with the data, or with the point that the data has been suggesting. And so it's an anecdotal example, but it piles on. The Democrat Party is losing moderate Democrats. Oh, and I almost forgot, on top of Michael Rappaport and the rest of them, we also have that former BLM founder from Rhode Island coming out to endorse Donald Trump. I mean, it never ends. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks. So I actually never thought we'd be here, although maybe that's a little bit of a lie, because I have to admit Chris Cuomo, before he got fired by CNN during the first bit of the Biden administration, he was pretty fair. You know, he wasn't the worst guy on CNN like he was during the BLM riots. It seemed as though almost Chris Cuomo was having a little bit of a redemption arc, slowly. I mean, not a full redemption arc, but, you know, kind of approaching redemption. So maybe it's unfair to say that I would never expect this from Chris Cuomo, but it certainly is shocking in a way.
If you get those two, though, you're going to sit it out? Or you're going to go...
Oh, if it's Biden, Trump, look, for me, again, we survived a Trump administration. Would we survive another one? Yes. Yes. I don't think there's any greater risk to America with him than with Biden. And for people who are now going to attack me and say, what are you talking about? Trump is like this crazy man. Well, look, you know, as Patrick says, the data is the data. Nobody was trying to kill us when Trump was president in a way that they're not now. If anything, there's more hostility. And you can have reasons for that any way you want. I'm just saying, existentially, I'm not afraid of a Trump presidency. Existentially, I'm not afraid of another Biden presidency because, unlike many people in America, I believe that the country is much stronger than any individual leader. We survived the Russia thing. We survived January 6th. We survived having Biden as a gaffe machine. We survived Congress going after each other and doing nothing for the rest of us. We survive these things. Are we better for it? No. Should we be doing things differently? Yes. I think it happens. I don't know when. I don't even know why. But, you know, in terms of who I'm going to vote for, I would really have to see where we are at that moment in time. And
so you're open to a Trump vote?
I am always open. And I'll tell you this. People say, oh, bullshit, you've never voted for a Republican in your life. Wrong. And not only have I, the first vote I ever cast was for a Republican.
Folks, that is CNN's Chris Cuomo. Obviously former CNN, but still CNN's Chris Cuomo. That's the same guy who was paid for 4 years straight during the Trump administration to trash on Donald Trump, essentially saying, yeah, he's now open to voting for Trump in 2024. And the reasons that he lists are perfect. It seems as though we weren't as vulnerable. It seems as though we weren't being attacked in the same way when Trump was president. And the most important element, and that's the element that we've been covering over the last couple of months especially, it seems as though the hysteria is slowly fading away. You know, I think Chris Cuomo used the perfect word. He used the word existential. You know, Democrat rhetoric in the modern day has become essentially built on existential crisis. Everything is an existential crisis. Oh, if the Republicans get the House, it's an existential crisis. They're going to come after you and your rights and, you know, the whole shtick. If Donald Trump ever wins the presidency, the country as we know it is gone, straight authoritarianism. I mean, it's always an existential crisis with these people. That's generally how the rhetoric tends to be, right?
He will do he will get away with, he will imprison, he will execute whoever he's allowed to imprison, execute, drive from the country.
Biden, he has really returned the soul in many respects to this country, which was his promise. So I believe he kept that promise. The other option, alternative is the alternative from hell.
He's going to put us in camps and concentration camps. He's going to overthrow democracy, blah, blah, blah. It's a bunch of nonsense. And Chris Cuomo makes the right point. You know, America has survived some pretty tough stuff in its history. I'm pretty sure it can survive another Joe Biden or Trump term. And I think that's the realization that most people are coming to, or at least most moderates or most people who haven't bought in 100% into the nonsense hysteria, that in the end, I mean, it doesn't really change anything. We're going to see different policies, and most likely Trump's policies are going to be better for you. But Republican or Democrat in power, it's still pretty much the same thing. It's the same stagnant Congress that refuses to do anything. It's the same nonstop partisan attacks and witch hunt investigations and back and forth, out of control, facetious rhetoric. You know, it's the same thing no matter what. At the end of the day, it comes down to the policies. Your life's going to be better under who? Under what ideology is the most important thing? Under Democrat ideology of endless government spending, fiscal irresponsibility, government subsidies to specific targeted groups, teachers' unions in control, no school choice. I mean, the list goes on. There's the Democrat vision for the country, which we've seen over the last 3 years has been a monumental disaster. And then there's the conservative view, which Donald Trump represents, which is open trade, strong foreign policy, nationalistic policies, a little bit of protectionism, lower taxes, a higher index of freedom in general. People have those two options, but most importantly, it seems as though people are realizing that those are the options on the table. It's not what the media is presenting as Uncle Joe, diplomat, experienced leader, respect on the world stage, and oh, horrible Donald Trump, my nuclear codes, we're headed to World War III. You know, that's the narrative that the media attempts to portray, but more and more people are seeing straight through that obvious mirage, that obvious scam, smokescreen, smoke bomb, whatever you want to call it. People are seeing right through it. And it's not just people like me and you. It's not just the conservative-minded people. It's also the Chris Cuomos of the world. Folks, Chris Cuomo represents a significant faction of the population, whether you want to admit it or not, whether you want to accept it or not. I mean, Chris Cuomo is still Chris Cuomo, you know, little Chrissy Cuomo, not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, but he represents a good portion of normie middle road American voters. There's a lot of people who see themselves in Chris Cuomo, just like there's a lot of people who see themselves in Joe Rogan or Bill Maher or Tim Pool, really any character, even Beyonce and Taylor Swift, whatever, it doesn't matter. Chuck Schumer, name a politician, name a celebrity or a public figure. There's always a portion of the population that's going to align themselves with X public figure. Chris Cuomo is one of those figures. Him now jumping on board and saying, well, you know, I'm considering voting for Donald Trump because of XY reason, and then XY reason happened to be quite logical, happens to make sense. Well, that's going to appeal to people who might not have thought in that way initially, or might have been a little bit reluctant, kind of leading towards that, but they haven't had the courage to make that step. Well, when Chris Cuomo comes out publicly expressing this kind of opinion to millions of people, it's going to have an effect. Just like when Joe Rogan does the same thing, just like when any public figure does that. And so the more this happens, the more rappers, the more Michael Rappaports, the more BLM leaders, the more Chris Cuomos start to come out and say, like, look, what's happening right now with the Democrats is just not working. Maybe 4 years of Donald Trump isn't going to be the end of the world. When people start to say that, the Democrat narrative starts to fall apart. The entire Democrat election strategy is not vote for us because our policies are good. It's not vote for Joe because he's a charismatic, strong, competent leader who's going to make your life better. The Democrat argument in the last two general elections, has been evil orange man bad, must be avoided at all costs, we will lose our country. I don't think that rhetoric works anymore. And honestly, I think the more Democrats dig into that strategy, the more they demonize Donald Trump, the more they attack him, the more they indict him, the more the opposite effect seems to come into play. The more people go, well, this seems wholly unnecessary. Donald Trump's not the greatest criminal in American history. Why is he being treated as such? Maybe there's something up here, and maybe maybe the Democrats don't have a plan. Maybe the Democrats don't have a strategy or a messaging strategy, and everything is just Trump, we're gonna get him, you know, the Letitia James thing. Well, it's not working anymore because it's the boy who cried wolf. It's starting to fade. Nobody's buying it anymore. And Trump, I think very slowly, or maybe even very quickly, is becoming the perceived lesser of two evils. It's an absolutely beautiful thing to see, and we keep on seeing it, whether it's with polling data with independents, black voters, Latino voters, swing state voters, or whether it's the anecdotes, it's obviously happening, and the left is entering full-on panic mode. You gotta love it. Let's hope this trend continues. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, friends, and I'll see you on the next one.